Ableton tutorial. Big shout out all the new Patreon members. Big shout out all the new YouTube commenters, subscribers. Means a lot. Lovely to have you here. Right, you read the title of this video, Creative Sample Chopping Techniques to make loop less boring. Yeah, you can hear what's going on in the background, but let's just talk a little bit about why I find something like this interesting. One of the ways in which our brains engage with music is about predicting things. And when we feel we can predict certain elements of a thing, it allows us to focus more on the differences that are happening each time that thing happens. This technique was really explored through minimalism. Guys like Steve Reich and Philip Glass, who I've spoken about before on here, also explored to the absolute maximum by pioneering composers like Eliana Radigue or La Monte Young, who write incredible drone-based music that doesn't change pitch at all often. Sometimes it does, but with minute changes in tuning that allow us to really focus in on the frequencies and the changes in timbre, all of that kind of stuff. If you're into that, check it out. Those guys are fantastic. But how can we apply that to what's going on today? Why am I doing this? Well, I'll show you what I started with. I started with this. 3 elements going into making a loop. A sample of a celesta, a drum loop, and a bit of extra stuff happening on a drum rack. And I turned that into this. So what's happening is my brain is predicting certain things. It's predicting when the kick drums are going to come. It's predicting when the snares are going to come. It's predicting the harmonic information, kind of where the chords are changing. So I have a sense of not feeling lost. I know where I am, but that being able to predict then also allows me to explore the changes in each of those things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, as always, delete, start from scratch, and look at how we build this. So just going to press stop on that drum rack. Stop on the drum rack. We're going to press stop on these 2 things. Oh, that's fun. You can see where we're heading. This is going to be fun. Let's delete that. Let's delete this. And so we're just starting with these 2 samples. An audio sample, it's a loop of a celesta, and an audio sample, it's a drum loop. And the first thing I'm going to do is look at how we're going to chop this up. And what we could do, then we're going to make a drum slicing. We're going to make a slicing preset that allows us to do the same technique kind of quickly and see what happens. So yeah, I'm going to drop this into a simpler. Let's bring in an instrument simpler. Let's bring that over here and let's put it right next to it so it makes a bit of sense. Just going to drag and drop that into here. Now I'm going to just set this to play a C every now and then. So that's playing now. That's going to play. Let's do one on every beat. Yeah. So now that's going to trigger. Well, let's put that on its own. Let's put that on its own lane. What happens if I bring you up here? Yeah, let's put you on your own lane. So yeah, there we have it. It's triggering. It's doing exactly what it would expect the simpler to do. Now the simpler has all of these lovely functions over here. We can change this where it's starting the sample from. We can change the length of the sample using this one. And bear in mind, this is changing not the length in time, but the percentage length of the sample. However, if we turn snap off and we turn loop on, now we can adjust a loop of the sample. And what that means is that when this sort of runs out of new grayed out sample bit to play, it starts playing it again. So let's bring this loop right. And now as I move the start point around, you can hear it doing all of this kind of stuff. And now we have this little, we can hear a lot of clicks. We can fix that using this little crossfade guy here. And so if we zoom in, we can see it adding some crossfades. Ooh. So this is essentially what we're going to play with today. But first of all, let's now delete that channel. I'm going to make a slicing preset to make our job super easy. So I'm going to bring in a drum rack. We're going to drag a drum rack into here. And I'm just going to bring in one instance of simpler into this drum rack. And I'm going to do a few things. First of all, I'm going to make sure it's set to classic mode, which I want. I'm going to turn snap off. I'm going to leave loop on. I'm going to change the voices to 1. We only need, we only need monophony. Monophony, is that the word? Is that the word? We only need monophony for this. But importantly, I'm going to map a bunch of stuff. So I'm going to open up the macros and plus, and we have all the macros available to us now. So I'm just going to right click, map to macro 1, right click, map to macro 2, right click, map to macro 3, right click, map to macro 4. We're going to need to use some of this stuff. So we're going to do this to 9. So it appears down the bottom here. Map to macro 10, map to macro 11, map to macro 12. Maybe it's nice to map that to macro 16. What else might be nice? Yeah, let's map this to 13, filter frequency. What is also going to be nice, I think, is things like this. Volume to velocity. Let's put that on number 5. Let's also add the velocity to filter cutoff to macro number 6. Doing well. We've got some nice stuff. Let's map a transpose to macro number 7. What else? Let's come back here. What else have we got over here? Maybe let's change the filter actually to one that gives us a bit of drive, and then we're going to map that to macro 14. That makes sense. So all the filter stuff here, filter frequency, filter drive. We've got 2 left. I'll tell you what, I'm going to leave those for now because maybe I want to add those later. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to label that command R. What are we going to call this? We're going to call this creative sample chopping. Name of the video. Name of the rack. Now I'm going to drag that rack into my user library here, and in your user library, I've added obviously a bunch of new folders of my own. This will always be in yours. This is defaults. This is an Ableton folder. And if I expand this, we can see slicing. This is where we put slicing presets. So I'm just going to click and drag that into slicing presets there. Now, when I click on my audio sample here, it's just the audio sample. Importantly, you need to have warp turned on to make this happen. Otherwise, if we turn warp off, we can't slice. So we turn warp on, right click on this, and we go slice to new MIDI track. Now I'm going to slice it by 1/8 notes. I think that's quite nice for this. Yeah. And slicing presets. If I click here, creative sample chopping. That's my preset that I've just made. So we're going to use that preset. Now when I click OK, it creates a new channel. Let's bring you down here. It creates the MIDI notes already for how it's going to chop that sample up, and it puts it all into my drum rack here with all of the mapping already done. One thing it does that's kind of annoying is that the crossfade will not work yet because it turns warp on, and that's because we had warp turned on with the sample. We can't slice without that turned on. So I'm just going to go through and turn warp off for all of these. Warp off. Come on, slice 2, warp off. Slice 3, warp off. Probably speed this up. Right, so I've gone through and I have turned warp off for all of those samples. So now, if I solo this and I just press play, we have basically the same thing we had when we were just playing the sample, but it has some clicks. I'm going to fix that. I'm just going to bring the loop length down and give it a bit of crossfade. And let's turn up the attack and release here. And already it's not sounding like the sample, but we don't want it to sound like the sample, do we? We want to try some interesting things. So now we have all of these things mapped that we can play with that are going to have a real effect on the sample. So I'm just going to bring in an expression control. And we're just going to map a bunch of these. Let's turn all of these to random. Random. Oh, not pressure. Random, please. Random. Random is already there. random, and I'm just going to connect this with where it starts playing the sample from. We're going to connect this one with maybe the loop length, and let's bring that down a bit. Cool, let's add this one to here, and again, and let's add this one actually to the crossfade. It's quite nice. So already it's sounding a bit more interesting. Maybe it's nice with a little bit of drive on the filter. Oh, what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy across the processing that I had on the original loop, which is just an EQ, an OTT, and a compressor. And let's drag you across. Oh, there we go. Sounding quite nice. Right, let's bring in a randomizer in MIDI random at the start of the whole chain. Now what this is going to do is usually in the past sometimes we've used it to obviously change the pitch of a MIDI note, and when that's going into a synthesizer, that of course changes the pitch of the note coming out of the synthesizer. When we use it in this context, because each of these is a different MIDI note, C1, C sharp 1, D1, D sharp 1, etc., changing the incoming MIDI note is not going to change the pitch of the sample being played back. It's going to change which actual slice of the sample is being played back. So we're going to drag that in here. And we're going to say maybe just 1. So that means at the moment, 0 chance, nothing's happening. But if I bring the chance up to 100%, then it's either going to play the slice that it's supposed to play, or it's going to play the slice before, or it's going to play the slice after. Maybe just bring that chance down to 50%. So half the time it's playing the slice it's supposed to be playing, and 50% of the time it's playing the slice before or the slice after. We've got it set to by here. I'm going to change all of these from logarithmic to linear as well. I think this will give us sort of a nicer spread. Does that map to anything? Yeah. Right, I'm also going to come in here. I'm gonna do 2 things. First of all, I'm gonna add note length. That's quite fun. But I'm going to randomize the note length. Now, because all of these, because of the slicing preset we used in here, if I open up the in-outs on the drum rack, we can see these are all connected with choke group 1. Terrible name. I wish we would come up with a new name for choke groups. But essentially what that means is that, what a choke group means is that if a MIDI note is currently playing on slice number 1, and another MIDI note comes in on another slice on the same choke group, then it will stop playing whatever's happening on slice 1. I want to adjust, this is going down a little bit too low. Often we use this for hi-hat programming. For instance, if an open hi-hat and a closed hi-hat, you would have them on the same choke group, so that when the closed hi-hat hits, the open hi-hat stops playing. In this instance, we're using it to stop the sample, just keep playing through, which allows us to use this note length thing to sometimes make it short, sometimes make it long. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here. And I'm going to select all of these notes. Okay, can I make that so it fits? Can I make it so it fits? Yeah, there we go. Let's turn this off. Don't want to trigger stuff. Select all of those. And let's just bring the chance down a bit so it's not always hitting. Bit more. Maybe I want always the ones that are on the beat to play. Yeah. So let's select all of these. Dun, 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 dun. Not you. And let's make you always play. And now can I just duplicate? Yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate that, slide it up to here, duplicate that, slide it up to here, duplicate that, slide that up to here. So now it's always playing the samples on the notes. Let's actually bring the chance down a bit on the other ones. This is quite nice. Kind of digging this. This is quite nice. Of course, using the decay and the sustain and the release here, we can give the notes a lot more shape. It's now sounding a bit more plucky. But because we have the OTT at the end of the whole chain, it's sort of bringing out the tails a bit more. I do kind of like it like this with a bit more sustain on this. Right, so let's leave that there. Let's press stop on you, and so now we have this drum loop here. Let's solo, and that sounds like that. It sounds like a drum loop. But let's cut that using the exact same preset. So right click, slice to new MIDI track. We're going to slice via eighth notes, and we're going to do it using creative sample chopping. And we're going to do that. Now we're going to come in here, and we're going to turn warp off for all of these. Turn warp off. Turn warp off. Now let's bring you down onto this lane, and let's see what that sounds like. Surprise! It sounds like the drum loop. But again, let's bring an expression control in here. Let's change all of these to random. Again, let's change them to random linear, random linear, random linear, random. Linear, where have you gone? Random. I've done random. Oh, it's already on random. It's already on random. Linear, right. Let's connect these with similar things. That's kind of cool already. Right, what's happening if we do this? It's doing some weird things. It's kind of cool. I kind of like it. Bring these down. This is fun. This is fun. Right, let's do the same thing with a note length in here. Let's connect that with a map. Yep, nice. And let's also do the same thing in here. Let's bring down the chance of all of the eighth notes. Chance. That's nice. Let's adjust these things a little bit so it's not so many clicks. Let's give it a bit more drive. And I'm going to attach an LFO to the transpose here, because that's also going to do fun things to the length of these sort of loopy bits that are happening. So let's bring in LFO at the end of the whole thing. Let's change this to random. I'm going to leave this as a free rate. I'm going to add some jitter and a bit of smoothing, a lot of smoothing. Let's connect that to the transpose. That's a lot, right? Let's make it go only plus minus and only minus. Fun. Let's add certainly the compressor from the end of that, because that's side chaining against the drum rack, which is not playing right now, but you know, let's add that. Fun. Let's see what that all sounds like together. Fun. Remember, this is where we started. And just using slightly creative ways of chopping up a sample. Obviously, it feels a lot more halftime now. Maybe this is interesting for a B section in a song. For a verse instead of a chorus, maybe it's interesting for the whole thing. You're adults, you can make your own decisions as to how and why and where it might be interesting to do this. Obviously, it's a technique. Now that you've made your slicing preset, you can use that in, well, you can use it anywhere. Again, you're adults, you can make your own decisions. What you map the random stuff to on here is going to change, and of course the sizes of randomization, all of these loops is going to be interesting. Transpose works nicely on drums, of course. Maybe it's not so good on... let's turn this up a bit. It's a bit quiet, isn't it? Give it a bit more. There we go. Other things that are interesting, of course, is we've mapped this volume to velocity and velocity to filter stuff. So then playing with the filter cutoff, playing with the drives here can be interesting. Got 2 extra macros. If you map that to stuff, maybe pop it in the comments. Say what else you found interesting. There we go. Have fun. Share what you're working with. Awesome to have you here.